We are 24 hours away from puck drop in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League regular season, and welcome to SJHL Insider. My name's Jeromy Corrigan, the media manager for the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, and welcome to our new show, SJHL Insider, which will come to you every Thursday on all of your podcast platforms, both on Apple and Spotify, and you can also watch the video portion of the podcast as well on YouTube and Facebook. But this show is going to allow us to preview the upcoming weekends in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, and then our other show, SJHL Weekly on Monday, is also going to provide a great opportunity to recap each and every weekend in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. And this show will also give a chance to hear from all the great broadcasters, insiders from across the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, as well as writers, coaches, players, you name it, here in the SJHL. So it's another great platform for you, the fan, to pay attention to everything you need to know in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League and how to keep up to date on your team. So to give you some background on episode 1, the first episode of SJHL Insider, we have a full hat trick of guests. We will hear from the play-by-play voice of the Melville Millionaires and Yorkton Terriers, Benny Walchuk. We will check in with the play-by-play broadcaster of the Humboldt Broncos, Rory McGouran, who's also one of my co-hosts on SJHL Weekly, so we'll check in with him as well. We'll go to Melfort and hear from Mat Barrett, the play-by-play voice of the Melfort Mustangs, and we'll preview all 3 of the divisions in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League and how it kind of looks this season in the league, a year where it seems like there's a lot of teams that could potentially walk away with an SJHL championship and a lot to be determined. Now, before we meet our broadcasters and talk to them about what they kind of expect for this season in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, we must take a look at the standings from last year in the league as some background when it comes to previewing these divisions. And we'll start with the Sherwood Division. It was a tight matchup between the Melfort Mustangs and the Flin Flon Bombers. And at the end of the season, the last couple of weeks, Melfort's pulled away and ended up winning a division title with a 34-15, 4-5 record, good for 77 points. And it appears that team, Melfort's, they have a great returning core coming back, should provide another big threat in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League this season, and another team competing once again for a Sherwood Division championship. Flin Flon was in second in that division with a 34-21, 2-1 record, good for 71 points. They kind of faltered in the last couple of weeks of the season. They dropped all the way down to the 5th seed, but of course, everybody knows Flin Flon went on that impressive run to the SJHL final and then at the Centennial Cup where they had a great showing as well. The L'Orange Ice Wolves were third in the division with a 29-24, 1-4 record, good for 63 points. And the Nipawin Hawks, a year of change up in Nipawin for the Hawks, finishing the year with a 17-35, 0-6 record, good for 40 points. Now, in the Global Ag Risk Solutions division, it was Humboldt. A great season for the Humboldt Broncos last year, finishing in first in the division, second in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League standings, but they also had the most wins in the entire league, finishing the year with a 45-13 record, good for 90 points, just 1 point behind the Estevan Bruins for first in the SJHL standings. They're looking to have another great year, but another team that has a great returning core is the Balfour North Stars. And they finished last year with a 35-17, 5-1 record, good for 76 points, and fourth in the SJHL standings. But of course, they were eliminated by the Flin Flon Bombers in the first round of the playoffs. Notre Dame was third in the division with a 26-27, 3-2 record, good for 57 points. And Kindersley was fourth in the division, just missing out on the playoffs, getting beat out by the Notre Dame Hounds, 24-32, 1-1 on the year. And both of those teams, Notre Dame and Kindersley, looking to try and move up the standings this year and improve on their records. Of course, last but certainly not least, the Viterra division, the Estevan Bruins, they hosted the Centennial Cup last year, and they were first in the SJHL with a 43-10, 2-3 record, good for 91 points. They go on and win an SJHL championship, and then the showing at the Centennial Cup, and then Yorkton finishing in second, Melville in third, and Weyburn in fourth. And it's a perfect segue because our first guest is ready to go, and that is the play-by-play voice of the Yorkton Terriers and the Melville Millionaires, that being Benny Walchuk. Benny, thanks so much for joining us. How's it going today?
I'm good, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, hockey season is just around the corner. It starts tomorrow. You must be very excited to kind of get the ball rolling on the season.
Yeah, it's been a long off season. It's been a busy off season for myself with a lot of football and just golfing and baseball going on. But my passion is hockey and junior hockey. I can't wait to get back in the booth here very soon.
Yeah, and obviously you're one of the busiest guys in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League because you cover Yorkton, you cover Melville, and then you also cover Swan Valley and the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. So you're one of the busiest guys in the league for sure. But let's talk a little bit about the teams that you cover. We'll start in Yorkton. Obviously, they finished 6th in the SJHL standings last year. Great upset in the first round of the playoffs, but then losing to Estevan in the second round. What do you make of this returning group for Matt Hare's bunch, and what do you kind of expect from the Terriers this year?
Yeah, it's a little bit different than they thought about. They had Parker Jasper and Cale DePape eligible to come back, but unfortunately they went to different directions for their junior careers right now to the North American Hockey League. But Matt Hare is very, very happy with his recruiting class this year. It's probably one of the best recruiting classes he's brought in since he's been a head coach and GM with the Yorkton Terriers. On the back end, he's very happy with Dalton Mays, Cade Van Braban. He's got Logan Nimmo, who's had a great preseason to add to the returners like Tyson Perkins and Cody Norberg and company, and Kale Strasky. And then up front, he's very impressed with his recruits up there. He's got Dylan Ruptash, Brett Butts. I think he led the SJHL in preseason scoring during the preseason, and then collides with their returning group of the JD Halls, the Clay Slivas, the Karsten Kruskas, the Maddox Nolskis, who's probably one of the most underrated players in the league as well. So he's pretty happy with that. And then you said goaltending with Cale DePape, one of the top netminders in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League last season. But he's very, very high on Caleb Allen. He's from Lone Tree, Colorado. He's an 18-year-old. He had a very good year with in U.S. prep school, high school hockey last year. He comes into that fold of Ryan Willett, who they had a number of years ago. That comes from Matt Zaba, who's a former Yorkton resident, now down there doing some goaltending coaching. He kind of referred Caleb to come up to Yorkton. He's looked very good in the preseason as well. So it's a little bit different looking hockey club than maybe Matt expected a month and a half ago or 2 months ago. But looks like with a good preseason, a good end to the preseason, it's really coming into form at the right time.
And I was just going to say, the fact that you finished the preseason on a significant winning streak, that's got to bode well going into the start of the season and a crucial home to start the year against the defending SJHL champions in Estevan.
Absolutely. That's the biggest thing. And Matt said he wasn't really afraid. I know they lost a few games to start the preseason, but he just wanted them to gel, get better as a team. And as the preseason went on, that's when you kind of saw the more of the full Yorkton roster with all the line combinations intact, finding some chemistry. So, yeah, Matt's very impressed with how the preseason ended off. He's very excited with how the week has come together here with practice. And, yeah, what a better way to start than a home-and-home series with the defending champs to see where you're at here to start the season.
And it's going to be a great year, not only on the ice, it sounds like, for the Yorkton Terriers, but also off the ice because they're celebrating their 50th anniversary. I mean, you grew up in the Yorkton-Melville area. Maybe just speak to, what it kind of means to have, 50 years of Terrier hockey in the community of Yorkton.
Yeah, absolutely. It's big. I was around, my first year was when their 40th anniversary took place and had some festivities there. But just the last 10 years, we've done a lot in the last 10 years, from winning 2 league championships to winning a national championship in 2014, and just being in the community and being the play-by-play voice of the Yorkton Terriers. You met so many people that have been around the Terrier organization for a long time. A lot of board members, former players, executives. Daryl Spile, we see him. He owns a menswear shop in town. We talk to Daryl frequently. He's leading scorer in the SJHL, and just to hear his stories. With Don Chesney, who was part of the rivalry. I've known Chess for a very long time. He's talked about memories as the Yorkton Terrier. But yeah, it's an exciting year. They're going to have some different style jerseys to celebrate their 50th anniversary. They're going to have some events with some alumni as the season goes on. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. The hype is back. And I know with the restrictions kind of lifted here fan-wise for the rink, I'm sure fans are getting excited to head back to the Westline Arena and for a full crowd like we've been used to in the past.
Yeah, it's going to be a very exciting year in Yorkton for sure. And it's also shaping up, it looks like, to also be a very exciting year just down the highway in Melville. Lots of returning players for the Melville Millionaires. What do you kind of expect for this Millionaires team, who obviously they missed the playoffs last year, coming in 10th, but a strong returning group for the Mills, which is highlighted by Noah Wills?
Yeah, expectations are pretty high here in Melville. I know it's Mike's when he took over a couple of years ago. The first year was cut short due to COVID, and then last year was kind of his first full year of him taking the reins with his recruits coming into the organization, and you can just see in the development of some of those guys from last year. He's mentioned Noah, who they picked up in a trade with the Battleford North Stars. He's just been getting better and better as his junior career gone on. When he first came into camp, he was very, very small. Maybe a little timid, but his speed is picked up. His skating's got way better. He's a guy that's not afraid to go into the dirty areas. He can shoot a puck now, which he didn't do maybe at the start of last year. He can really shoot a puck. And he's offensively going to be led by Noah, but they do have a good supporting cast. You got Zach Kane, who's returning back from injury. He's going to be the captain of the hockey club. You got Nicholas Samso, who had a great season last year, cut short due to injury. And then you have guys around him that have been maybe not talked about as much. You got Braden Feifogel, who comes away from this Ontario, and he played in Northern Colorado last year, and he's a guy that had an excellent preseason. And then I think they don't get talked about as much as the Millionaire back end. They return pretty much every single guy eligible to get back, led by Aiden Robson, their assistant captain. They had Kaden Skamalski, who's a local product from Mooseman. He's a 20-year-old veteran. And then you got Louis Frederick Thaberge, who's probably going to be a guy that's going to NCAA scouts. You're going to be looking at him. He's just a smooth skating, defensive, right-handed shot defenseman, which you can't find that often. He's very good defensively. He doesn't get beat lots. So, yeah, it's a team that's really got a lot more depth than they did last year, and I think that Mike Rooney is going to use that to his advantage. And then when you talk about between the pipes, you got two 20-year-old netminders. You got Clement Lalabo, still as a third goaltender right now, but you got two 20-year-old netminders and Alexis and Jared Thompson coming in, and Mike's not afraid to run with those guys as long as he can. He has the room with his 20-year-old limit right now, so he'll lead the way here with the goaltending. He might go back and forth. We'll see how it goes here on opening night and the opening couple of weeks of the regular season. But expectations are pretty high here in Melville, and I'm sure with past interviews I've had Mike here the last couple of weeks, expectation is to make playoffs and make a run. And that's what's going to be exciting for this hockey club, and that's what it's going to be exciting here for the community of Melville, who's been kind of shorted playoff time here the last 5 or 6 years.
And I think it's just exciting the fact that, there's high expectations now for both Melville and Yorkton, which is just going to fuel that rivalry even more. But I guess when you look at the grand scheme of the Viterra division, obviously last year Estevan was loaded up for the Centennial Cup, and those other teams were kind of further back behind them. But I guess when you look at the other two teams in this Viterra division, in Estevan and Weyburn, kind of in different spots, how do you kind of see them playing out this season? Because they're definitely in two different situations, one obviously being at the top of the standings last year, loading up for a Centennial Cup, and then one being at the bottom of the standings and now looking to try and improve.
Yeah, you talk about Weyburn to start with. I think they're very similar position to Melville. They've had a lot of young players in their organization last year. They had a lot of draft picks that they've drafted the last couple of years as well. And I think they're going to be led by the young guys. I know Ty Mason just returned back from the Western Hockey League camp in Winnipeg. And from what I've heard, he's been very, very good since returning from the WHL. They had Kirk Mullen, who they got in a trade last year with Black Falls, who had a heck of a second half of the season. And then you have guys like Matthew Gauthier. You had Edward Ruck, who I've seen play in Steinbach. He's now a member of the Weyburn Red Wings. So I think their expectations are like the Millionaires. I think they're going to be much better, much more improved hockey club. And I think the expectation is to get into the playoffs and make a run. Goaltending-wise, now they have Desai Mitchell and 3 good goaltenders still left with the hockey club right now. So that's going to be the biggest thing. And then the back end is the same thing. A lot of those guys are very, very young. They got Nolan Henderson. They got Ian Meyer also back on the back end for the Weyburn Red Wings. So I think the expectations are just like Melville, pretty similar situations they're in with them young players, and we'll just have to see if those young players take that jump to the next level. And then when you look at the Estevan Bruins, like I said, a lot of turnover from last year's team. I'm sure they would not exchange it for winning a SJHL championship last year, but a lot of new faces there in the Energy City, but they're going to really rely on, I'm sure, early on of their veterans. They're going to be built from the back end out with Cam Herdlicka coming in. And then they're back in to acquired a couple of 20-year-olds in the offseason. And then you have Alex von Sprecken coming back as well to lead that back end. So it's going to be one of those things. They're going to rely on those guys, maybe get some offense from the back end, and maybe rely on a guy like Cody Davis or Cade Rump to lead the way for the Bruins offensively. But so, yeah, it's a pretty wide open division, and I'm looking forward to it with these matchups coming up here very, very soon. This Viterra divisional shakeup.
I know we were talking about it on SJHL Weekly, the fact that it seems like in this division, it's not just Weyburn, Estevan, it's not just Yorkton, Melville. Like, the rivalries are definitely real between all four teams in this division. And the fact that it seems like this year, you kind of already touched on it, this division seems wide open for the taking for any four of these teams this year.
Yeah, I think it's still very good. I think whoever gets off to a good start here in the first couple of months of the season can really set the tone, right. Really kind of put them above everybody. But yeah, it's wide open. If Melville gets on a run, they're going to play Yorkton a number of times. And if Yorkton wins those head-to-head series, they could really even up quickly. And the same goes with Weyburn and Estevan. So I think it's going to come down big time to goaltending. Whoever's going to have the goaltending. I know Melville's got maybe the more experienced goaltenders coming in. Estevan does have Cam Herlecka as a 19-year-old, but otherwise Weyburn and Yorkton maybe a little unknown. See how their goaltending will shape up. So I think the Viterra division is going to be very, very exciting. Like you said, those rivalries have really kind of ignited the last number of years with some playoff matchups coming to place. And yeah, it's going to be looking forward to it. Nothing better than a Yorkton Melville and a Weyburn Estevan on a Friday or Saturday night to fuel the junior hockey in all those communities.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time in all four of those communities for sure. And you get to be behind the mic for two of those teams. So that's extra special. So, Benny, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. Really appreciate it. And best of luck this season because you're going to be, once again, very busy.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Jeremy. And just personally welcome you back into the SJHL into Saskatchewan and just to your old media staff, led with Commissioner Kyle McIntyre, who's doing a good job in his first year. I'd like to thank all you guys. And it's been great so far with the new couple of shows and just the interactions with you we've had the last couple of weeks. It's going to be a big addition to the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. So pat on the back to everybody with IKS Media and the SJHL Media team for a job well done so far. And I'm looking forward to working with you guys here in the future.
And I speak to everybody. Thank you very much for the kind words. We really appreciate it. And we can't wait to have you on again. And we'll see you around the rink. Thanks so much, Benny.
Yeah, see you, Jeremy.
All right, that is the play-by-play voice of the Yorkton Terriers and the Melville Millionaires, of course, and the Swan Valley Stampeders of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. Benny Walchuk, a very busy guy in the SJHL, doing play-by-play, does 15 games, roughly around 14, 15 games for both the Millionaires, the Terriers, as well as the Swan Valley Stampeders. So one of the busier guys in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, and he'll definitely be on the show moving forward in the future on SJHL Insider because he's been in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League for now going into his 11th season in the league. So it's pretty incredible. Benny Walchuk, one of the great guys in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League when it comes to broadcasters. And we have a lot of great broadcasters in the SJHL. And he kind of touched on it last year. Obviously, the Estevan Bruins kind of ran away with that Viterra division with a 43-10, 2-3 records. And the only other team in the division that ended up making the playoffs was the Yorkton Terriers at 29-22, 1-6. Of course, I mentioned earlier, Benny does about 15 games-ish for each team that he does broadcast for. And if you want to see his entire broadcast schedule, you can check out his blog as well. You can find Benny on all of his social medias on Twitter, Benny at BennyGX94. Sports. But yes, the Viterra division is going to be a very interesting battle this year in the SJHL between all four of those teams that appear to be very close. Our next guest is not ready just yet to go, but it is going to surround the Global Ag Risk Solution Division. And that's going to be between the Humboldt Broncos, Balfour North Stars, Notre Dame Hounds, and Kindersley Clippers. Last year, of course, the Humboldt Broncos had the most wins in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, 45 wins in 58 games, just the 13 losses. But because of the no shootout losses or overtime losses, they ended up finishing second in the SJHL due to Estevan having one more point. And despite Estevan actually having less wins in the SJHL, They finished with a 43-10, 2-3 record, good for 91 points. And lots of holes to fill in the offseason for Scott Barney and company, losing some of their big pieces from last year in the SJHL. But it appears they've got some great recruits coming in for sure. And then going up in the Global Agri Solution Division is the Melfort North Stars, who have another great returning group as well. A lot of returning forwards, a lot of returning defensemen. I do believe like 16 or 17 returning players from last year's Melfort North Stars team, which finished fourth in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League standings with a 35-17, 5-1 record, good for 76 points. And the Notre Dame Hounds were the other team that made the playoffs from the Global Agri Solutions Division with a 26-27, 3-2 record, good for 57 points, but they ended up losing in the first round of the playoffs to the Estevan Bruins in 5 games. A series much closer than I think a lot of people thought, because that series was much tighter. The games were a lot closer, even though it ended in 5 games. It was a very tight battle between those two teams. But to talk more about the Global Ag Risk Solution Division, we welcome in our next guest, and that is the play-by-play voice of the Humboldt Broncos. There he is, Rory McGouran. Rory, how's it going today?
Jeremy, it's going great. We're, 1 day away from the start of SJHL Puck Drop, 2 days away from the Humboldt Broncos, where I am right now in the Albert Peterson Arena. But yeah, excitement and the planning is at an all-time high right now.
Hey, we missed you on Monday at the Cooperator Center, and I think the fans want to know, before we get into talking about the division, how did you golf on your trip?
It started off strong. I think it was an 89 in round 1, and then consistently got higher and higher scores, and then golf, that's not the way you want to go over a 4-round.
No, but I'm sure there was some other factors that played into that for sure. But let's talk hockey. Golf season's pretty much over. Let's talk about the Global Agri Solution Division, and obviously let's start with the team that you obviously know the most about, and that's the Humboldt Broncos. A great year last year. They had the most wins in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, 45-13, 0-0. You know, they lose some big names in the offseason, but it seems like Scott Barney and company have really filled out their roster for this year. How do the Broncos look so far?
Yeah, I think you got to start with identifying the players that are no longer with the Broncos. It starts up front with Connor McGrath and Matthew Perkins, and are they going to be able to replicate the 143 points that those two combined for? It's yet to be determined, but they've done a good job in bringing in additional players that's going to contribute to a more 200-foot roll towards the Humboldt Broncos. And I think you have to love the consistency of their returning players when you look at Cage Newens, Ethan Zilke, Lucas Ceccarelli, Alex Soretsky. It's a ton of experience up front. It's a little bit of a more different identity, I think, than when you do lose McGrath and Perkins. But the forward unit is as complete as I think any team would like it to be. Then on defense, more losses there. 5 20-year-olds out of the roster from last season. So then they get Chase Lacombe back from the WHL. They recruit Dalen Weigel from the WHL. Trade for Damon Byers with championship pedigree from the Estevan Bruins. So the defense, maybe losing 5 20-year-olds, might be just as good, if not better. And then there's no bigger loss than Race Ramsey in net, the all-time SJHL wins leader in a single season. It's as big of a loss as any in the SJHL. So what do the Broncos do? They try to scour the market for goaltenders. They find one out of the USA in Benjamin Motu, and then they get one out of the QMJHL in Tristan Boileau. So, it could have been a year where it looked like, with all the pieces moving, that is this time we want to rebuild, but I don't think it is. And with all the pieces that rolled out, if the Humboldt Broncos can see themselves among the top of the SJHL standings come quarter way through or halfway through, I think you have to be immensely impressed with the ability that they've shown to get this roster right back to where it was.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's a rebuild. It seems like it's more of a reload, with some of those pieces definitely coming into the roster this year for the Humboldt Broncos. And maybe just speak to the Broncos during the preseason. I really actually wanted to talk to you about that preseason game against Kindersley, because I caught the tail end of the broadcast, and there was 5 shorthanded goals for the Humboldt Broncos. Maybe just speak to the preseason and that game specifically.
Well, they do have the reigning shorthanded point leader still on the roster, and Ethan Zilke. They have the reigning shorthanded goal leader in the SJHL, and Lucas Ceccarelli. So I don't think it's really any surprise that they're going to be able to capitalize on teams' mistakes on the power play and score shorthanded goals. But 5 in a game, no. I got a text from my mom, and she said the record for shorthanded goals in an NHL game, I believe, was 3 scored by the Winnipeg Jets. So that was 2 more than the NHL record, but I've never seen it. And I mean, give credit to Kindersley as well. They had, I think, 4 power play goals. So 9 out of the 11 goals were scored on Kindersley's power play. It was wild.
I love the preseason. Yeah. Anything can happen, it seems like. Let's move on to the Balfour North Stars. Last year, I think they surprised some people, finishing in 4th based off of how young they were. But a lot of returning players for the North Stars, and it's shaping up to be a good year in Battleford's too, it seems like.
I mean, yeah, I think they got to be the preseason frontrunners to win the Global Agris division based off of how much returning experience they do. I think it's like 16 some odd players are back for the North Stars. And I mean, it starts up front with Jake Southgate, with Holden Dole, and in my opinion, a guy who's been too far underrated in this league for a few years now, Steve Kesslering, a great forward that can do it all. 200 foot, he can score, he hits, he's fast as heck. So their forward units are as complete as any. Tynan Ewert on the blue line is going to be a front runner to lead the league in defensive scoring. I think he had 32 points in his rookie season. And then we already saw what he did in the preseason in one of his games, scored the goal in the 3rd period to tie it, and then scored the overtime winner to win it for Battleford against Kindersley. So he's going to be a force. And then in net, I'm never really worried about Braden Klamosko and their ability to find goaltending. Is it going to be Kenyon Lowen? He's a little bit of a smaller stature goaltender, but the numbers he put together last year proves that he can do it. And then they brought in a little more reinforcements, but it seems like they always find one. They're one of the best coach teams in the league. And I think if you ask 10 people who are, the top 2 teams, I think all 10 would have Battlefords in the top 2 teams prior to the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to bet against a team that has a Braden Klamosko, who's won Coach of the Year 2 years in a row. They're a very well-coached hockey team, and I mean, you've seen it in the preseason too. It already seems a little bit like they're in mid-season form with some of the ways they're playing in some of these games.
Yeah, absolutely, and 16 returning players. If you could fill in the holes with really nice complementary pieces, maybe one that surprises you, that's how you get out of the gate strong. I think Battleford's really poised to do that.
Now let's talk about the Notre Dame Hounds, just sneaking into the playoffs last year. A tough loss in the first round to Estevan, but I think they pushed the Bruins a little bit, so the games were a lot closer. But, the Hounds have some really good pieces on the back end. The question is, they lost some really good pieces up front. So can they fill that void from last year? It's a bit of an unknown right now.
Let's start with the back end. I mean, you're going to have a pairing that's going to, they're vying to be the best pairing in the league, or especially one of the best power play pairings in Jared Sitch and Sam Kroon. I think they combined for like 36 power play points last year on that top unit. So they're going to be fine. I'm not worried about that pairing. Their defense might become the strength of their team. When you lose a Kevin Anderson and an Elliot Dutil up front, maybe that is how you change an identity and still remain competitive. But we talked about Battlefords and their returning forwards. Notre Dame, I think, has 3. They got Will Dawson, Antoine St. Ange, Dane Proby. I might be missing a 4th one on that list, but they have guys coming from all over too. Some Alberta AAA, some North American hockey leagues coming in, some junior B players are coming in. So I'm interested to see what they did in the offseason and some of these pieces, if they can become a diamond in a rough. But that forward unit is just so much turnaround that we really don't know until they get going.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to start the season. You get to see them the first 2 games too, so you'll get some insight for sure on the Notre Dame Hounds. And then finally, the Kindersley Clippers. They just missed out on the playoffs last year, but a team that, when it comes to returnees, they return all of their defensemen from last year, losing a bunch up front and in between the pipes. But having that continuity on the back end is probably going to help them at the start of the season, you have to think.
They can start a roster with 6 returning defensemen, which I don't know if any team can say that in the SJHL. So that is huge to have for the Kindersley Clippers. I'm excited to see if they are taking the next steps of their rebuild, which we kind of saw in maybe the last year or two. But I think they can. Tylen Hilbig is going to be a force. He was a player in his rookie year that already looked like a 4-year-old veteran. And if he has now that confidence, he can be here and deserves to be here. He's going to be a handful for a lot of teams. You mentioned the 6 returning defense. And I think when you look around the league at holes to be filled, you mentioned Race Ramsey and Cal Shell. But Matt Pacenti, I think, has to be right there as well. So I'm not really sure what the goaltending situation is looking like in Kindersley. But Matt Pacenti was, I think, one of the most underrated goaltenders in the league. because Kindersley only scored, I think the 10th most was 145 goals throughout the year. They had the last place penalty kill. So a lot of those times where they looked like they were, the best team on the ice and ready to find their footing, I think Pacenti was a big reason. So they're going to need to kind of shore up that goaltending and then find a way to create a little more offense. I think they're on the right track, though, to surprise a lot of people. And if they finish in 6th to 8th after the season, wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, what you have to love about this league is you get in the playoffs, anything can happen. Now, final question for you, Rory. You kind of already alluded to it, but when you look at this division right now, it sounds like what you're saying is Humboldt and Battleford seems like the teams to beat in this division so far, hey?
I think prior to the season, and I mean, we know what junior A hockey is about. Like, you need to have experience. You need to have depth. You got to have defense, and you got to have goaltending for sure. Like, that's to get a goalie rule. And if you don't have it, you can score 5 goals a game and still finish below 500.
Yeah.
So prior to the season, I would say that there's 2 tiers right now. And I think in the top one's Battlefords and Humboldt. But like you mentioned, the parity in this league is second to none. So if I'm proven wrong, I won't be surprised at all.
That's for sure. You have to love the parity in the SJHL. Well, Rory, thank you so much for taking some time to come on SJHL Insider. We really appreciate it. Have a great weekend of your home and home against the Notre Dame Hounds. And we look forward to welcoming you back to SJHL Weekly on Monday.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you Monday.
All right, that is the play-by-play voice of the Humboldt Broncos, Rory McGouran. We're excited to have him back on SJHL Weekly on Monday. And, of course, you can hear to all of the Humboldt Broncos broadcasts as well in Humboldt on the radio with Rory each and every home and away game as well. So he'll be busy this weekend as the Broncos play a home and home against the Notre Dame Hounds, both Saturday and Sunday, with the Broncos playing their home opener on Saturday. And the final division we are going to preview is the Sherwood Division, and our guest for the Sherwood Division is here. That is the play-by-play voice of the Melfort Mustangs, Mat Barrett. Matt, thank you so much for taking some time to join us today. Really appreciate it. How's it going?
Jeremy, it's awesome to be here, buddy. I'm excited for my debut.
Yay. Everyone's making their debut in the first episode. That's the beauty of the first episode. Everyone makes their debut. It's great. How was your off season? How was your summer?
Relaxing but busy all in the same time. It was nice to step away for a bit and have some fun and just be able to enjoy myself for a few months and some weekends with weddings and stuff, right? So it was nice. Got a lot of golf in, but excited to be back at the rink.
It's good to hear that all the broadcasters are getting lots of golf in during the off season. It's great to hear. Hopefully everyone's gotten better, their golf game improved during the off season. But let's talk a little bit.
No, not here.
No, it didn't? Yeah,
no.
Me too. It was pretty bad. It was a pretty bad year on the golf course. But that's the good news is hockey's here, so we can talk hockey, something we're much better at doing, I'm sure. Let's start with the team you know well, the Melfort Mustangs. Obviously a division championship last year, but I mean a heartbreaking loss in the playoffs in 7 games to the Yorkton Terriers. But coming into this year, a strong returning group coming back. There must be high expectations in Melfort for this year.
Big time. You look at the returning group of especially 20-year-olds, and it might be the best, if not close to the best in the SJHL. The likes of Captain Ben Tkachuk, Joel Favreau between the pipes, Hayden Tuba on the blue line, Kevin Minnock on the blue line, even guys like Dawson LaRue up front. Clark Huxley was a superstar in the playoffs, and just guys like that. And that's just the tip of the iceberg for that returning group. So it's guys who have been there, done that, have felt the hurt of what last year's playoffs was, and they're hungry for a lot more this year.
I was going to say, when you have that many returning players coming back, and you mentioned a strong returning core of 20-year-olds who felt that heartbreak last season, you have to think that, it looks like we have lost Matt.
We're good.
He's good.
Right,
he's back. We figured it out. Okay, I was just going to say, with that heartbreak of those 20-year-olds coming back, you have to think coming into this year, they are going to be very motivated going into this season.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a lot of that hunger, that, the pain that they felt like they should have been here or been in the playoffs a little longer last year, but they weren't. So it's, understanding what needs to be done this year. And kind of putting it into action and kind of teaching some of these kids that weren't here last year what it takes to get it done in this league.
Now, obviously, the Melfort Mustangs last year, they claimed the Sherwood Division title, but one team that was pretty close to them was the Flin Flon Bombers, and they also, obviously, their experience from last year and their playoff run, they also have a strong group returning as well. What do you expect from the Flin Flon Bombers this year?
I expect a team that's going to be able to really put the puck in the net. They've got a really nice returning group of forwards. Guys like Cole Dupero, Jeremy Tremblay, Jaden Mercier, guys are going to be able to put the puck in the net. And Mike Reagan always seems to find a couple young kids that can really play. So I really expect another tough team to play against, and a really heavy team in Flin Flon, because that's what that team is, and they are one of the toughest teams to play in their home rink, and I think we all know that. So they should have a really good club this year. I'm just a little maybe. I don't want to say concerned, but just want to see who they put in net and who might be the puck stopper for that crew this year.
Yeah, and even when I spoke with Mike Reagan during our season previews on SJHL.ca, he said there might be a little bit of an unknown in between the pipes, but at the end of the day, they'll figure it out. When it comes to, obviously, they got to put 18 guys in front of the goalies, so we'll see how it all works out in Flin Flon. But when you have a returning group like that, up front and on the back end, it's shaping up to be a really good battle between Melfort and Flin Flon this season. But when it comes to the other two teams in the division, let's start with Larange, finishing 7th last year in the SJHL standings too. I thought that series against Humboldt could have easily gone either way between those two teams. Some heartbreak for Larange, but when it comes to the Ice Wolves, they had some holes to fill this off season. What do you expect from them?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be young, but they are always going to be a tough team to play. Kevin Kaminsky and Kyle Schneider have really put this group into a identity where it's never an easy night against them. They forecheck you hard. They're going to make life difficult on you at both ends of the rink. They're going to hit you hard, and they're not going to care how they do it. They are, a tough team. They're really going to just make life difficult, and that's kind of the biggest thing with them. They still have some skill, though. You look at guys like Ty Evans, who should really take another step forward this year. Some veterans like Ethan Strick and Walker Jerome are guys who have been there a while and have done it. Right, so they're going to be another team to look out for, just to maybe play a little bit of upset for a few teams maybe ahead of them in the standings, especially late in the season.
And finally, let's chat about the Nipawin Hawks. And last year, for the Hawks, they missed the postseason, but it definitely was a season of change for them with, the changing at head coach halfway through the season to Tad Kozin. A very young team last year, and it appears most of the players can come back this year. So obviously, it seems like they're going to take a step forward in 2022-2023. Yeah,
and the thing with them is I think they're going to be able to play with, a lot of teams. They're going to be much improved this year, and especially with a full year with Tad Kozin as their head coach. That's really going to, help this young group adjust. Having that consistency of that same, coach behind the bench, but up front, like Carson Dobson, Rylan Lefebvre, guys who are going to be able to score. And they're not going to be a pushover this year, that's for sure. And in net, they had two kids come in this year that really impressed, and it kind of made them able to move Harmon Laser-Hume to Flin Flon, right? So they obviously have confidence with two young kids in net. I do think it's going to take a bit of time for them to prove and kind of show what exactly they're going to be this year, but they're not going to be an easy out, that's for sure. And I think they're going to be much improved from last season, and they're going to compete for a playoff spot probably right until the end.
Yeah, and of course, you mentioned obviously last year they were a young team and going to be a year older this year, but really Tad Kozin's first full year as head coach and GM of this hockey club, and you have to think there's going to be a little bit of time for them to kind of get used to the way probably Tad wants this team to play, so there might be some growing pains off the hop.
Yeah, you can probably assume that, but a lot of these guys are back from last year. Right. I think it's just going to be kind of tightening the screws a little bit in the systems that Tad wants to play. It's kind of his first major head coaching gig, right? So it's going to be maybe some growing pains for him, but some growing pains for some other people as well.
But I'll say this, if their team plays anything like the way Tad Kozin played in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, that is going to be a very exciting team to watch down the stretch. But when you look at, I guess, finally, Matt, when it comes to the Sherwood Division, who do you see being a favorite in this Sherwood division, and what do you think? What do you kind of expect for this year for these 4 teams?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. It's going to be, difficult, and might be the first time we ever see it happen. But all 4 teams in the division, I feel, could make the playoffs, and probably will finish top 9, I believe, in the league. Just the competitiveness. You look, Nipawin's going to be better than they were last year. LaRange is likely going to be better than they were last year as well. Melfort and Flin Flon are still up there, and likely Melfort's a bit better. Flin Flon might be about the same as they were last year, right? So I don't think anybody in this division is, looking for that first overall pick. That's for sure. There's no sort of rebuild for any of these teams this year, I don't think.
And I said this with Rory, and I'll say it with you again. That's what you have to love about this league is the parity. It's unbelievable. It seems like everybody's going to be competing this year. It's going to be tough to make the playoffs.
Absolutely, it's going to be great though. That's the best part about our league, right? And I think you guys said it is you never know who's going to win on any given night and who's going to win the league in any given season. And that's the best part about it is you could see the 12 seed beat the team in second place at some point throughout the season, and really can make life exciting for the playoff race.
Well, we'll see what happens when the puck drops tomorrow night for the first 5 games of the SJHL season. Matt, thank you so much for taking some time to chat today. Really appreciate it, and enjoy opening weekend.
Thanks, Jeremy. You too, buddy.
All right, that is the play-by-play voice of the Melfort Mustangs, Mat Barrett. An exciting weekend of hockey, and Matt and the Melfort Mustangs are going to be up in Flin Flon for their first game of the season tomorrow night as they take on the Flin Flon Bombers in a great matchup in the Sherwood Division. Before we wrap up the first episode of SJHL Insider, let's wrap through the schedule for the first weekend of the SJHL season. 5 games on tap on Friday. Of course, like I mentioned, the Melfort Mustangs are visiting the Flin Flon Bombers. The Yorkton Terriers will visit the defending SJHL champion, Estevan Bruins, and they will be hanging up their championship banner tomorrow night, or Friday night, I should say, as well. The Weyburn Red Wings will visit the Melville Millionaires. The Balfour North Stars take on the Kindersley Clippers at the West Central Event Center in Kindersley. And then the Nipawin Hawks will be in LaRange to take on the Ice Wolves. Saturday nights, another 5 games on the schedule. Flin Flon will visit Nipawin. Estevan visits Yorkton. The Balfour North Stars play their home opener against the Kindersley Clippers. Humboldt welcomes Notre Dame. And then LaRange visits the Melfort Mustangs. And then the final game of the weekend, Sunday evening in Wilcox, as the Notre Dame Hounds play host to the Humboldt Broncos. So 11 games on the schedule in opening weekend in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. It is going to be a great opening weekend of hockey. And quite frankly, a great 2022-2023 in the SJHL. Before we wrap up, we have to thank our sponsors who are able to help us put on SJHL Insider, SJHL Weekly, that being Chevrolet, RBC, Viterra, SaskTel, Direct West, Tourism Saskatchewan, and the Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association. Thank you so much for being able to sponsoring our shows, both of them, SJHL Weekly, which airs on Monday, and of course, SJHL Insider, which airs on Thursdays. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, as well as follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And the big one for me is also subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is where you are going to find all the episodes of SJHL Weekly, which comes out on Monday and streamed live on Monday, and SJHL Insider, which comes out every Thursday afternoon. So be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, as well as you can get these episodes on demand as well, wherever you get your podcasts, whether that be Apple or Spotify as well. But that'll do it for the first episode of SJHL Insider. My name's Jeromy Corrigan. Thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy the games this weekend, everyone.